I think we have this really romantic idea of how mysteries are solved.
Oh, definitely.
Like, we always picture the detective in the trench coat, the smoky room, the magnifying glass.
Right, the classic noir setup.
Exactly. But in the modern world, the most terrifying stories usually don't look like stories at all. They look like spreadsheets.
Yeah, it's that banality of data, right?
Yes.
You scroll past a CSV file and your eyes just glaze over.
Hmm.
But if you actually stop and interrogate those rows and columns, sometimes they absolutely scream at you.
And that is exactly what we are doing today, because we have a source document for this deep dive that, frankly, looks like the most boring thing on earth at first glance.
This really does.
It is a file simply titled Incident Cluster. It's granular, it's super administrative, and it covers this 26-month period from December 2023 all the way up to February 2026.
And it's just 43 rows.
Right.
That's it. 43 individual reports from a very specific cluster of neighborhoods. We're talking about Aswathi Gardens, Ambalafara, and Punthura.
Which, on the surface, is just bureaucratic noise. I mean, you read it and it's like traffic violation, loitering, nuisance.
Just everyday neighborhood app complaints.
Exactly. But our mission today is to take this dry, dust-covered data and show you that it's actually a thriller.
Oh, it really is.
Because when you apply the heavy hitters of statistical analysis to this list, and I'm talking, Bayesian inference, regression models, ANOVA testing, it completely reveals a narrative of a neighborhood that is slowly and methodically being put under siege.
And not just a siege, but a literal surveillance war. We aren't just looking at crimes here. We're looking at the behavior of an entire environment.
Right.
We're going to uncover how these sort of sporadic, random complaints back in 2023 evolved into a high-frequency security crisis by early 2026.
So let's just dive right into the file. We're looking at these 43 unique records. Before we get into all the intense math that predicts the future, just give us the lay of the land. Like, what are we actually looking at here?
Sure. So if you strip away the dates and just look at the text, the qualitative stuff, the data sorts itself into three very distinct buckets of chaos.
Okay.
You have security, traffic, and public nuisance.
And they aren't weighted equally, are they? Like, this isn't a perfectly balanced pie chart.
Not at all. The dominant bucket, the one that really drives the anxiety in this whole data set, is security and suspicious activity.
Wow.
Yeah, that accounts for 56% of the entire log.
Yeah.
24 distinct incidents.
I want to pause on that for a second, because security is such a vague, almost corporate word. Are we talking about, like, a car alarm going off or something else entirely?
The language here is what gives it away. It's hyper-specific. The qualitative analysis highlights keywords that just keep repeating over and over. Unknown, loitering, casing, and this is the big one, house layouts.
House layouts. Yeah, that's the one that stopped me cold when I was reading the source material.
It implies intent, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
We aren't talking about a couple of teenagers cutting through a yard to get to the park. The data suggests individuals who are actively studying the perimeter. They are looking at access points. They are checking gates.
And there is one other keyword that appears in this bucket more than any other. It appears 35 times.
Right. Footage.
Just think about that. There are only 43 reports total, but the word footage is mentioned 35 times. What does that tell you about the person filing these reports?
It tells us this environment is essentially a digital fortress.
Yeah.
The residents aren't just looking out the living room window with a cup of coffee. They are actively reviewing CCTV. They have digital receipts for almost everything they are reporting.
It's not just a hunch.
Exactly. This isn't hearsay. It's documented video evidence.
It creates this really intense image of a neighborhood that is watching itself 24/7. It's almost like a panopticon.
That's a great way to put it.
So that's the biggest bucket, security. Then you have the second one, which is traffic.
Right, traffic and road safety. This is about 40% of the data, so 17 incidents. The keywords completely shift here. We start seeing reckless vehicle road safety driving.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Every neighborhood has bad drivers. Is this really part of the siege, or is it just someone complaining about bad parking?
It totally feels mundane until you look at who they are telling.
Oh, right.
The routing logic, which we'll get into the statistical weeds of in a bit, is fascinating here. These traffic reports are almost exclusively routed to the MVD, the Motor Vehicles Department. It's a completely different communication channel than the security threats.
So the reporter is distinctly separating physical danger to the home from vehicular danger on the road.
Exactly. Precision is the underlying theme of this entire data set. And then we have the third bucket, the absolute outlier, public nuisance.
This is a tiny slice, right?
Very tiny, only 4% of the data. Just 2 incidents out of the 43.
So from a purely statistical standpoint, can we basically just ignore that bucket?
In terms of raw volume,
Mm.
yes. But in terms of impact, absolutely not.
Really? Why?
You have to look at the key words associated with it.
Hmm.
Miscreants, menace, unruly, alcohol. These are what the analysis specifically calls high distress events.
Oh, I see. These are the ones that feel visceral. These aren't just someone walked by my gate. This is an active confrontation.
Exactly. In data science, we so often obsess over the median, the average experience. But these outliers represent the moments of highest volatility. And the source material explicitly notes that these specific reports triggered the highest level responses.
Meaning what, exactly?
We're talking emails being escalated to the ADGP Law and Order, the district police chief, even the NIA, the National Investigation Agency.
Wait, the NIA? For a neighborhood nuisance complaint?
For one specific instance, yes, which tells you that nuisance in this context might actually be a euphemism for something much, much darker.
Yeah, you don't call the NIA because someone is playing music too loud.
Right. The reporter knows that. You call them for a legitimate threat to national or regional stability.
That is just a wild escalation. So we have our 3 buckets, the constant hum of surveillance, the bureaucratic battle of traffic, and these really rare spikes of high-level danger.
Precisely.
But if we just look at the bucket statically, we miss the movement of the story because this didn't all happen at once.
No, not at all. And this is where the title Incident Cluster really earns its name. The timeline is where this spreadsheet turns into an actual thriller.
The analysts use time series and regression analysis here. Now, for the listener who maybe hasn't touched a graphing calculator since high school, walk us through this narrative arc.
Happy to. The analysis breaks it down into 3 very distinct phases. Phase 1 runs from December 2023 through roughly January 2025.
That's a pretty long stretch, well over a year.
And it was almost completely silent. Sporadic at best, you'd get maybe 1 report every few months.
Okay.
If you lived in Aswathi Gardens during Phase 1, you wouldn't think you had a systemic problem. You'd just think you had a normal, quiet, suburban life.
The classic calm before the storm.
Exactly. Then we hit Phase 2 right around June 2025, the ramp up. Suddenly, the entire baseline shifts. We start seeing 1 to 4 incidents a month. The silence is gone. The noise is starting.
And
then Phase 3 hits, late 2025 into early 2026, the explosion.
just give us the raw numbers for that.
November 2025 saw 11 incidents in a single month. February 2026 saw 10.
So we literally went from once every few months to once every 3 days.
Right. The environment fundamentally structurally changed. And the analysts actually ran a regression model to quantify exactly what this escalation looks like. They generated a linear equation, y equals 0.245x minus 1.59.
Okay, I promised the listeners we'd explain the math. Translate that equation for us. What does that 0.245x actually mean for a resident just looking out their front window?
It's the slope of the line. So in plain English, it means that for every single month that passes, the average number of incidents increases by about 0.25, a quarter of an incident.
I mean, that sounds small, right? A
No.
quarter of an incident?
It sounds small in isolation, but it's relentless. Think of it like compound interest, but for neighborhood crime.
Oh, wow.
It means the overall temperature of the neighborhood is rising by a quarter degree every single month. It's a steady mathematical climb straight into chaos.
And there's a metric for how accurate that climb is.
Right.
Yep.
The R-squared value, which measures how well that mathematical line actually fits the reality on the ground, is 0.44.
Is that good?
In the incredibly messy world of real-life crime data, that's a very strong signal. It basically says time is the enemy here. The longer this goes on, the worse the situation inherently gets.
And it's not just the volume that's increasing, right? It's the frequency. There's a stat in the source material about the gap between incidents that I found just deeply unsettling.
The velocity metric.
Yes.
This is honestly one of the most telling indicators of a siege mentality.
Walk us through it.
If you look at the entire data set as a whole, the average gap between reports is about 19 days, almost 3 weeks of breathing room.
Which is manageable. You can relax for 3 weeks.
Exactly. But if you isolate just the surge, that phase 3 in late 2025 and early 2026, the gap drops to 12.8 days.
Wow.
And in the absolute peak months, it's often just days or even hours between reports.
The breathing room is just entirely disappearing.
It's suffocating. And the analysis points out that the data is highly bursty. It doesn't drip slowly, it floods. Look at February 7th and February 14, 2026. Multiple reports were filed on those single days.
So you basically get hit with the waves, you try to catch your breath and recover, and then boom, another wave crashes over you a week later.
It's psychologically exhausting for whoever's dealing with it. You don't know exactly when the next wave is coming, but the math definitively says the waves are getting closer together.
Now, speaking of when the waves come, this was probably the biggest surprise for me in the whole deep dive. When I picture casing a house or loitering or suspicious individuals, I have a very specific movie scene playing in my head.
Let me guess.
Hmm.
Midnight, flickering streetlights, someone in a dark hoodie hiding in the shadows.
Exactly. 2 a.m., the witching hour.
Well, the data says you are completely wrong.
Yeah, I was shocked.
The incident cluster analysis clearly shows that the peak operational window for all this activity is between 12 p.m. and 5 p.m.
The afternoon. In broad daylight.
The absolute middle of the day.
Why? That just seems so incredibly risky. The sun is out. Everyone can see you.
Or it's brilliant. Think about a residential area like Ambalethara or Punthura. Between noon and 5 p.m. on a random Tuesday, where is everyone?
Oh, right. At work, kids are at school, the houses are totally empty.
The neighborhood is practically a ghost town. If you walk around a quiet suburb at 2 a.m., you stand out immediately. A cop car drives by, they're going to stop you.
Because no one should be there.
Exactly. But if you walk around at 2 p.m., you look like a delivery driver. You look like a contractor. You look like you're just waiting for an Uber.
You hide in plain sight.
The expert analysis calls this a brazen form of reconnaissance. They are purposefully testing the perimeter exactly when the guardians are away.
That is actually so much scarier than the midnight prowler, the afternoon loiterer. It makes you really question your own basic assumption of safety. We always think daylight protects us.
Daylight actually creates the opportunity here. And there's a really weird quirk in the reporting habits that connects directly to this.
What's that?
So the incidents happen in the afternoon, say Tuesday at 2 p.m., but the data shows the emails reporting them massively spike on Sundays, 10 emails, and Fridays, 8 emails.
So the person filing these isn't firing them off in real time.
Sometimes they do,
Yeah.
but there's very often a lag. The text of the report will say, on January 26th, this happened, but the actual email is dated the 28th. It strongly suggests a structured workflow.
A workflow, like it's a job.
Like an administrative task, yeah.
Yeah.
The resident comes home from work, maybe realizes something felt a bit off, or maybe they just routinely check the DVR on the weekend. They sit down, review the footage, remember 35 mentions of the word footage. They clip the relevant sections, and they send out the bashed report on Sunday morning.
It's incredibly systematic. This isn't blind panic. It's literal paperwork.
It's highly disciplined, which perfectly brings us to the system itself. We talk about what is happening, but we really need to talk about how it's being handled.
Right, because this reporter isn't just shouting into the void. They clearly have a contact list, and they know exactly how to use it.
This is the routing logic section of the analysis. And the analysts used a chi-square test here.
Now, I want to make sure we really understand this part. What is a chi-square test actually looking for in a real-world context like this?
Think of a chi-square test as basically a randomness detector. It looks at categorical variables, in this case, type of incident on one side, versus who gets the email on the other.
Okay.
And it asks, is the relationship between these two things just random chance? Or is there a deliberate pattern?
And what did the test find?
The p-value was 2 times 10 to the -8th.
Which means, oh wait, that's a decimal point followed by 7 zeros.
Yeah. In the world of statistics, that basically translates to absolute zero. It means the probability that this routing is random is entirely non-existent. The reporter has a rigid, almost algorithmic protocol for exactly who they contact.
Break down that algorithm for us. How does it work?
It's fascinating. If the keyword in the incident is traffic, vehicle, or reckless, the email goes to the MVD 100% of the time. No exceptions.
They don't bother the police with bad driving. They go straight to the regulator.
Exactly. Highly efficient. Now, if the keyword is loitering, casing, or security, it goes directly to the control room. The analysis actually calls the control room the workhorse of this entire data set.
Because they handle the bulk of it.
Right. They handle 84% of the security load.
So they are the true first line of defense.
They are. But then you have the high command, the ADGP, the commissioner, the NIA. They only get involved when the keywords shift to nuisance, miscreants, or menace.
So the reporter completely understands the bureaucratic hierarchy of power. You don't call the commissioner for a parking violation. You call the commissioner when the social order of the neighborhood is breaking down.
Exactly. And the analysts used another test de novo or analysis of variance to verify the actual burden placed on these different departments.
ANOV compares the averages, right? Like who is carrying the heaviest box.
That's a great analogy. And the ANOV results conclusively prove that the control room bears the highest statistical burden by far. They have a mean of 2.17 reports per month.
Which leads to a really interesting policy argument in the source material, doesn't it?
It does. The expert argument here is essentially, if you want to actually fix the problem in Aswathi Gardens, don't throw your resources at the specialized high-level units. Throw resources at the control room.
Because they are the ones drowning in the daily volume?
Right. It transforms a localized citizen complaint into a macro-level policy recommendation. And that's incredibly rare. Usually, citizen reporting is just messy and chaotic. This is hyper-structured.
So we've looked at the past, the escalation of the timeline. We've looked at the present, the routing logic and how it's handled. Now I want to look at the future.
The predictive stuff.
Yeah. The report ends with a Bayesian analysis. This is where we stop just counting what happened and start predicting what will happen. Now, Bayesian statistics can get a little heady, so walk us through the core concept here.
The core concept of Bayesian analysis is really just about updating your beliefs as new evidence arrives. You start with a prior, what you currently think is true, you add the new data you've observed, and you get a posterior probability.
So it moves us from asking what happened yesterday to what is the nature of this place today?
Exactly. It estimates the true underlying rate of an event. And the model here suggests that the true rate of incidence in this specific cluster is now steadily sitting between 1.14 and 2.07 per month, with 95% certainty.
What does that mean practically for the people living there? Say we have a really quiet month next month. 0 incidents. Should the neighborhood celebrate?
No, that's the trap of standard observation. A quiet month is just statistical noise. It's luck. The system itself, the actual environment of these neighborhoods, has set itself to mathematically produce about 1.6 incidents a month.
That is the new normal.
Yes. The underlying state of the neighborhood has permanently shifted.
So the baseline has just moved up entirely.
Permanently, unless some massive external intervention changes it. And the Bayesian model is so robust, it can even predict the exact type of incident we're most likely to see next.
What's the forecast look like?
If a new report comes in tomorrow, there's a 55.6% chance it is security-related, meaning someone casing a house or loitering. There is a 40% chance it is traffic-related.
And the nuisance category, the ones that went to the NIA.
Statistically negligible in terms of pure probability.
So if you live in Aswathi Gardens today, you shouldn't be preparing for a massive brawl in the street. You should be preparing for someone quietly watching your house from the sidewalk.
Based on the math, yes. The threat profile is very clearly silent reconnaissance, not loud chaos. And that brings us right back to that regression line we talked about at the start of the deep dive. It's still pointing up.
The arrow hasn't leveled off at all.
There is no plateau in the data. The model predicts that for the rest of 2026, we are going to see a baseline of 5 to 6 incidents a month. But because of that bursty nature we discussed, those concentrated waves, we could easily see months with 10, 12, maybe 15 incidents.
It's just a completely sobering trajectory. We started this deep dive looking at a spreadsheet. 43 rows. It seemed so incredibly dry.
And we ended up with a highly vivid picture of a neighborhood actively under siege.
We found a reporter who was just hyper-vigilant, scanning hours of CCTV footage every Sunday morning to methodically build a case file.
We found a routing system that is statistically perfect, ensuring the right problems go to the right bureaucrats without fail.
And we found a timeline that is just aggressively accelerating. This isn't a string of bad luck for a neighborhood, it's a mathematical trend line.
That's the ultimate so what here. When you look at data this granular, you realize that safety isn't a static thing. It degrades, it shifts. And in this specific case, it escalated right under everyone's noses, specifically between the hours of 12 p.m. and 5 p.m.
That image of the afternoon loiterer is definitely going to stick with me. We have this default assumption that we are safe when the sun is out and shining.
But the data definitively proves that in this specific cluster, the afternoon is the ultimate vulnerability window. It really forces you to ask, what does modern neighborhood security actually look like anymore?
Right. Is it a tall gate? Or is it being the person who reviews the footage on a Sunday morning and actually sends the email?
And by sending that email, they are the one creating the data point. Without the report, the entire pattern is invisible.
Exactly. If this person just stops reporting, the regression line technically disappears from the spreadsheet, but the danger on the street remains.
It makes you wonder how many other neighborhoods out there have this exact same escalating pattern, but no one is there building the spreadsheet.
That is the genuinely scary question to leave you all with. Well, on that note, I'm definitely going to be paying a little more attention to who's walking down my street next Tuesday at 2 p.m.
As you should. We all should.
That's it for this deep dive. A huge thank you to our expert for breaking down the math behind the madness. For everyone listening, keep your eyes open, check your blind spots, and we'll catch you on the next one.